In this video, it's time to talk standard terminal arrival routes. That's coming up next. Hello Sim Pilots and welcome back to another Microsoft Flight Simulator video. Today we're going to go through a standard terminal arrival route. We'll choose the arrival, briefly approach, look at the charts, and then fly the example. So what is a standard terminal arrival route and why do we use them? A standard terminal arrival route, also known as a STAR, is a flight route that aircraft on an IFR flight plan will use to connect the last points of the flight route with the first points of an approach, usually the initial approach phase. These routes are used to keep traffic flowing in a predictable, orderly manner and also keep the aircraft away from any obstacles or terrain or departing aircraft. So we're currently at flight level 380 in the A32nx once again, and we are flying from Munich in Germany up to Oslo in Norway. We have just reached our cruising altitude and it's time to plan the arrival. So let's jump into the cockpit and take a look at what we are going to do. So here inside the cockpit, if we have a look, we are still 554 nautical miles away from our destination. So let's have a look at Navigraph charts and see how we're going to prepare for this approach. The last waypoint on our flight plan is Lunip. So that should be the first waypoint of our arrival. Let's take a look at the winds at our destination and see which runway we're planning to land on. So our winds in Oslo is 170 at 9 knots. So let's bring up Navigraph and have a look at the charts. Right, so yeah, as you can see, we've departed from Munich and we're heading up north towards Oslo in Norway. We still have quite a long way to go, but let's plan this arrival so long. Let's have a look at the chart for Oslo and take a look at the ground layout. So as you can see, we've got two parallel runways, 01 left and 01 right. Because I have our winds coming from the south, we want to land into the wind. So we are going to land on runway 19 left or 19 right. I'm going to choose 19 right as the arrival runway. So let's look at the approach we would like to fly for that. So if we bring up the chart list for Oslo, we have the approach we said is going to be 19 right, so we'll choose ILS 19 right. R&P, we have VOR approach, so we're going to do the ILS for 19 right. So let's take a look at this chart. Looks like a pretty basic ILS chart, straight in either from Titla or Bavad as our initial approach fixes. So our standard terminal arrival route is going to take us from our last waypoint, which we said was Lunip, and it's going to take us to either Titla or Bavad, and that's the approach we are looking for. So let's go to the standard terminal arrival routes and we look for a Lunip arrival. Here's Lunip for Lima and Lunip for Mike. Lunip for Lima is for runways 01 left and right, so it's not that one. It must be Lunip for Mike. There we go, Lunip for Mike. So from Lunip, it's going to take us around to Titla. So let's program that in the MCDU, plan that, and while we cruise, we'll discuss the standard terminal arrival chart. So destination, arrival, ILS 19 right, Lunip for Mike, arrival, approach via Titla, we said, and that is that. So we're going to insert that there. Let's have a look and make sure this is programmed correctly into our MCDU. Let's go to plan and we can step through the navigation display and make sure everything is as it should be. So there's Lunip, DDAX, there's our constraints. Let's bring up the chart so we can compare the arrival with what we have in the MCDU. Okay, Lunip max 250 knots, DDAX 250 knots, Golf Mark 447, flight level 120, 250 knots, Golf Mark 426 at flight level 090, Golf Mark 422, 220 knots all the way around until Golf Mark 453. Let me just zoom in here a little bit. Titla flight level 050 to 20 knots and then continuing to the runway. Okay, so that looks good. Let us set up the performance page. So for that we need the QNH at our destination, which is 1005. Temperature is 10 degrees Celsius. Oops. Magnetic winds is 170 at 9 knots. 17009. That's not right. 17009. Transition altitude is 7,000 feet. Minimums for this approach: 770, 775, 775. And that's that. That's all programmed in there. So we still have 558 nautical miles to go. Let's set up a top of descent point so we know when to start descending. So based on the arrival chart, we need to be at GM 447 by flight level 120. Let's have a look at our progress page. Golf Mike 447. Stick that in there. We're still 465 nautical miles away. So we need to descend. Calculator. Current altitude. Our target altitude is going to be 12,000 feet. 82 nautical miles before target. So we're going to put an 82 nautical mile ring around Golf Mark 447, so I know when to start my descent. So let's go to the fix page. Stick in Golf Mark 447. And I'm going to put a radius of 82 nautical miles around it. Let me just check that I have done that correctly. There we go. There's my 82 nautical mile ring around Golf Mark 447. So I know when I reach that ring, I can begin my descent to be at Golf Mark 447 by 12,000 feet. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and talk about this approach. So this is a very basic standard terminal arrival chart. At the top you have the airport identifier, the name. It says RNAV star. RNAV meaning you need some sort of GPS device to fly this approach. You cannot do it on the old steam gauges, as this is not using any VORs or NDBs or anything like that. Altimeter set Tesco Pixels, transition level by ATC, RNAV 1. Surveillance service shall be available. Loss of RNAV capability, request vectoring. Vectoring may be used for sequencing. Dend as cleared by ATC. Here's the identifier, Lunep for Mike, for runways 19 left and right. RNAV arrival. Speed max 250 knots unless otherwise indicated. Clearance limit is Titla holding. So once you've been cleared on this arrival, you may not proceed past the holding at Titla until you've been given clearance by ATC. Okay, lost communications. So this is what you would do if you have to lose communications during this approach. Follow cleared or expected start until initial approach fix, then start approach to assigned runway without delay. If no specified runway for landing has been assigned, start approach to runway 19 right without delay. Then here it's got the routing in words. So Lunip, then DDAX, then Golf Mark 447, then Golf Mark 426, Golf Mark 422. You can see it's showing you the distance, so 11.3 nautical miles, 9.2, 6.6 between all the waypoints. So once we get to Golf Mark 453, it's max 220 knots at flight level 090. Then you would proceed straight to the initial approach fix, which is Titla, max 220 knots above 5,000 feet. From there, you would move on to your approach chart, which is this one over here. So as you can see, there is Titler, our initial approach fix at 5,000 feet. From there you would head to Odudi at 4,000 feet, and then begin the descent to Zinlo at 3,500 feet, and from there you would join the localizer and the glide slope at a heading of 192, and you would descend down to the runway 19er. So this is our approach charts. I'm not going to go through this chart, as I do have a tutorial on flying the ILS. If you haven't seen that, check out the ILS video, and that explains everything on a chart like this. So here's where I got my minimum descent altitude and the transition altitude, so to fill in the approach phase. And that's basically how you fly a standard terminal arrival route. All that's left to do now is continue the flight, and I will pick it up at the top of descent. Alright guys, welcome back to the cockpit. We're almost reaching our top of descent point. As you can see, here's our radius ring that I made to mark our top of descent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the altitude down to flight level 120, and then we can begin our descent. So I'm going to do a managed descent. So there we go, thrust idle descent. Yeah, it's going to start our descent, and we're going to continue down to flight level 120, and we must be below flight level 120 by Golf Mike 447. After that, we'll continue down to flight level 090. Okay, so we're coming up to our waypoint Lunip. There is a 250 knot speed constraint at Lunip, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select selected speed and slow down to 250 knots. There you can see the aircraft decreases its descent rate in order to bring the speed back to 250 knots. Once the speed reaches 250 knots, the descent rate will increase again, and we will continue our descent down to flight level 120 by Golf Mike 447. And there you have it, 250 knots. So the descent rate will now increase again, and we continue down to flight level 120. Okay, so here we're approaching Golf Mike 447, level at flight level 120, 250 knots. So we can continue our descent down to flight level 090, which we need to be at by Golf Mike 426. So let's continue the descent. We're coming up through 10,800 feet, so what we can do now is we can turn on the fasten seatbelt signs, we can turn on the nose wheel light taxi, and the runway turn-off lights can come on. We can also switch on the landing system. That will give us our reference once we capture the glide slope and the localizer. There's alt start, so we've captured flight level 090, so we will level off there, and that's where we're going to stay until Golf Mike 453 over there, and then we will descend down to 5,000 feet. So we're just going to continue this line all the way until that fix there, and then we're going to descend. So I will fast forward and see you there. Okay, so we're coming up to waypoint Golf Mike 453, flight level 090, 220 knots. So we can get ready to begin our descent down to 5,000 feet. There we go, Golf Mike 453, 090, and let's begin our descent down to 5,000. As we make this turn, okay, 7,000, QNH 1004. Okay, so here we're coming up to waypoint Titler, surfing the clouds at 5,000 feet, 220 knots. So our next waypoint is the initial fix Odudi. We need to be at 4,000 feet, and we need to be at 200 knots. Slow down to 200 knots. We're going to begin the descent down to 4,000 feet. Also going to set flaps 1 as we slow down. Okay, Titla is our right turn towards Odudi, coming up on 4,000 feet. There you can see our glide slope and our localizer indicators coming in.
2,500.
What we can do here now is we can activate the approach phase. Activate approach phase. Confirm. Let's do manage speed. The aircraft will now slow down to the green S speed for flaps 1.
2,500.
We are 2,500 AGL. What we can also do now is that we can arm the approach. So once we arm the approach, the aircraft will turn to intercept the localizer and the glide slope. I'll just wait until we've made this left turn. There we go, our left turn. Let's activate the approach. There we go, Cat 3 single. There's the glide slope coming in and the localizer is coming in. The localizer is captured, the glide slope is captured. We are 10 nautical miles out. Let's go ahead and change to ILS. As you can see, we lined up perfectly with the localizer and the glide slope.
2,500.
Okay, 8 nautical miles out. Let's set flaps 2. Continue slowing down. Descending through the clouds.
2,500.
Okay, 6 nautical miles out. Let's set flaps 3. We can lower the landing gear. Turn on the landing lights. Go on the cabin.
Flight attendants, please prepare for landing.
Almost see the runway through the haze. Let's set flaps full. On the speed brakes. And there is our runway. Okay, before landing checklist, EFIS is required, India is required, gear is down and 3 green, exterior lights all on, nose wheel lights set for takeoff, auto brake is armed, spoilers armed, flaps are full, and landing memo is no blue before landing checklist complete. 1,000 feet. Perfectly on the glide slope on the localizer. 700 feet HL. A little bit high. I see 3 white, 1 red. But here we are on the glide slope.
400.
Let's go ahead and disconnect the autopilot.
300. 200. 100 above. 100.
Slightly to the
Minimum.
right.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10. 5.
A little bit right of center line, but I will take it. It's reverse thrust. Slow down. And there you have it, guys. That's a standard terminal arrival route into Oslo. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. Comment below what you'd like to see, and we can make that happen. I'm going to turn off the runway here, clean up the aircraft, and go and park at the gate. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.